So you've nearly finished beginning Greek. Congratulations! You've made it through perhaps the hardest part of the journey to master Greek of the New Testament. But you're not done yet. In this video, I want to give you next steps. What happens once you've finished beginning Greek to ensure that not only do you not lose your Greek, but actually continue to grow it and develop it in a way that is going to be helpful for what your goals are. So let's get into it. A lot of students, when they start beginning Greek and finish beginning Greek, perhaps in seminary or Bible college or somewhere like that, they get to the end of that semester where they've learnt the basics and they feel that they kind of got what they need to be able to keep going. And yet the statistics are really against that position, because most of the people who go through beginning Greek will lose their knowledge of the language and they'll want to recover it later on down the track. The reality is that what you learn in your beginning Greek class is really just the beginning. And if you finish the beginning Greek and you've got your participles down, you can do passing, well, there's still a lot to learn. And if you don't continue to develop your Greek, you're going to lose it. And you're certainly not going to make it more effective and more useful for you as you go. So it's important to have a plan. So that from where you are now, you can go all the way to being able to read the New Testament fluently, to being able to study it with richness and the depth that you want. And so in this video, that's exactly what we're going to talk about. In this video, I want to give you 5 steps that I want to encourage you to go through on a regular basis. Some of these are going to be every day, some of these may be every week, but 5 things that I want you to commit yourself to doing regularly to ensure that you keep making progress forward in your Greek and your Greek develops, so that not only does it become a huge source of blessing, but it also makes you more effective and more productive for the kingdom of God. So, what are those 5 steps? Well, the first thing you want to do is you want to remember why you started down this track. You learned biblical Greek so that you can study the New Testament in its original language. And why is that important? Well, because studying the New Testament in its original language is going to give you, first of all, clarity about both what the text is saying as well as what it's not saying. And it's going to save you a lot of confusion and ensure that the text is clear. You understand the author's message. This then gives you confidence in what the author is saying and your understanding of it, so that when you come to teach it, you can teach it with that same confidence because you've got that clarity. And the knowledge of the language will actually make you more efficient in your study of the New Testament. You'll be able to study passages much more quickly because of your knowledge of Greek than if you don't have knowledge of Greek. So studying the New Testament is really the goal, the reason why you chose to learn Greek. It's not so you can converse with somebody else in the language or have a discussion with somebody, because there's nobody around who speaks Koine Greek today. Really, it's about studying the Bible, studying the New Testament, and getting that clarity, confidence, and the efficiency, and that then resulting in the overflow of what you want for your own soul, and that is to be able to know the Lord and to know His Word richly as He intended it for us. Because we know that God communicated His will for us in a written form using a language, the Greek language, that we no longer speak today. And so to understand God's revealed will, we need to go back to the text that He has used to communicate with us about who He is, what He's like, what He wants for us, and so on and so forth. And so we need to go back to the text as God's written it, and that's what gives us that joy. And so we learn Greek to study the scriptures. And so that's the first thing. Remind yourself of why you did this, to learn, to study, and to be effective in the text of the New Testament. The second thing is to recognize that Greek is a skill that needs to be developed. Okay, you got your motivation, but your motivation needs to be paired with a right understanding of how to think about Greek. It's not just a class you do and then you're set. It's a skill, right? It's not like you know enough about, say, the Reformation history, and so now you can kind of go on and just go back to those books when you need to teach that later on. Greek's nothing like that. It's not a block of knowledge that gives you kind of a founding, a starting point that you can then just go and repeat or build on later on. You actually need to develop the skill of reading and translating the text of the New Testament, and develop the skill that comes from being in the text on a regular basis. It's a little bit like a baby, right? A little boy or a girl is going to learn to walk one little step at a time. They're going to start by pulling themselves up on something to stand up. And then a little while later, you'll see them start to push themselves around the furniture by holding on to it. And then a little while later, they start to take their first steps without holding on to something. And then a little bit after that, they're able to start walking and then running around. And so there's a development of their skill and their balance as they develop the necessary skills to be able to walk. And Greek is exactly like that as well. And you can think of the beginning Greek stage as kind of that stage as it's going to get you through all the way to, let's just say it's to this taking your first steps in the language, and you're going to feel wobbly and you're not going to have that confidence. And so you need to keep developing the skill until you can not only walk but even run in the text as well. And I'm mixing my metaphors there, but you understand what I'm saying. Greek is a skill to develop, and beginning Greek is nowhere near that running stage, right? You've still got a long way to go. So think of it as a skill. You need to keep working on it even though you've got the basics under your belt. So that brings us to the third point then. Knowing that it's a skill, what do I need to do to develop that skill? Well, the first thing, and this is the third point, is you need to continue to develop your building of the vocabulary, right? One of the biggest, in fact, the biggest impediment to people being able to read the New Testament in the original language is they don't know what words mean. And if you don't know what words mean, it doesn't matter if you know 80% of the words or 78 or whatever it is. It doesn't really matter if you're stopping once every 5 words to try and look up a word, which is the average of how many words you're going to look up if you know only the words that occur 50 times or more. So you need to keep building your vocabulary, and you'll find that this actually becomes something that will feed itself as well. The more your vocabulary grows, the easier the reading will get, and the easier the vocabulary acquisition will also get. And there's a bunch of reasons for that, but you really need to focus on vocabulary acquisition for quite some time. And here's where having smart tools is really helpful. For instance, I use Flashcards Deluxe, and the reason I use it is because it has a spaced repetition setting built into it. And what that does is as you learn a new vocabulary word, and then you say, yeah, I know that word, you've learned it, and you mark it as correct, when that's then going to increase the amount of time between when it shows you that word again. The more you see and review a word, the easier it gets, the easier it gets to remember because it's been moved from your short-term memory to your long-term memory, which means you need to review it less often. And this means then that you can start to add more words and more words without becoming overwhelmed by this sheer huge volume of vocabulary you need to learn. And so Flashcards Deluxe is a great app for this, and the spaced repetition setting particularly is a proven method of learning vocabulary that many linguists, and not only linguists, but more than that, even learning experts are saying this is the way to go in terms of learning. So spaced repetition is your friend, and you want to get a vocabulary app that will help you do that. And I'll leave a link to Flashcards Deluxe below so you can go and find out more information about the tools that I use. Now, to build your vocabulary with that, you want to set yourself a regular, sort of weekly, if you like, schedule. So each week you want to add some new vocabulary to your app, Flashcards Deluxe in this case, and build on that so that every week you're learning those words and then reviewing all your old words and adding that new set of words to your review deck. And this way, at a regular pace, maybe saying 30 words a week or 25 words a week or whatever it is, you'll just slowly tick your way through book by book through the New Testament. And that's the key thing, is don't learn by occurrence, learn book by book, because that's the key. Then you're going to be able to read entire books as you go through and learn the vocabulary for them. Which brings me to the fourth point. And before I get on to the fourth point, let me just encourage you, if you're finding this helpful, hit the like button on this video and then subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell so that when new videos come out, you get to see them. And that way you'll be able to learn how to read the whole of the New Testament as I explain things week by week on this channel. So the fourth point is really you need to read progressively and regularly, right? Read progressively and regularly. Now, the important thing here is that when you read progressively, you're progressing from the easiest books all the way through to the hard ones, because you've got to recognize that when you finish beginning Greek, your reading is slow, your comprehension is slow, and it's just hard work. So you don't want to go and jump directly into something like the Gospel of Luke or the book of Hebrews or 2 Peter. You want to start with something easy, because again, it's a skill to develop, and build your skill up until you can read those more difficult books. So start with the easy books and just, allow the reading speed and the comprehension speed to develop naturally as you go book by book through the New Testament. And this is the key. Book by book is the key. You start with the easy books like 1 John, 2 John, 3 John, and then you go on to the more difficult books, into some of Paul's writings. And then steadily, as your vocabulary grows, as your knowledge and skill in the language develops, you can go on to more difficult works. And this is exactly how Master New Testament Greek is set up, and the vocabulary pack I provide, which you can find at the link just below here, masterntgreek.com/students or mntg.me/student. Either of those will go to the same place, and you can get the vocabulary pack that I offer you there, which has got book by book laid out with all the vocabulary and instructions for using it with Flashcards Deluxe. But as you go, what I want to encourage you to do is, as you read through texts, just look up things that you find difficult. So for instance, if you're in 2 Thessalonians, for example, in Paul's writings, and you're struggling with, say, infinitives or even optatives there, well then go and pick up a good grammar that will give you a refresher of that particular area. I recommend something like Mathewson and Emig's Intermediate Greek Grammar, which is a really helpful Greek grammar, and I'll leave a link to that in the description below as well, so you can find out how to go get a copy of that on Logos or from Amazon or wherever. But go and get a good grammar and work through things that you're really struggling with in particular texts. Take your time and just work it out, and that way you'll grow, your skill will develop, and your knowledge will develop as you're starting to see and learn things within the text. And that's the key, really. Have a plan, put together a plan, and go through it. Now again, with Master New Testament Greek, I give you a plan, but there are others around. You could use Wallace's plan that he has on his website, or you could use Rob Plummer's plan. And I've compared those three actually, and I'll leave a link to the video in the card just up here so you can go find that as well and look at the comparison of how these different plans for going through book by book actually will work. Finally, because you're reading, I want to encourage you to make reading in the Greek New Testament part of your devotional time. Now you might think, well, I don't have time for that because I'm trying to read through the Bible in a year or whatever it happens to be. Well, okay, I can't, maybe it's worth sort of putting some of those other plans on hold a little bit so you can read more deeply and slowly through the Greek. But even if you don't, here's what I encourage you to do. Just take, say, 3 minutes and devote yourself for a set period of time, 3 minutes of reading a Greek text, right? And start with the easy ones, 1 John, and just build it up. And over time, because your skill in the language will grow, because your knowledge and of the vocabulary is developing, then you're going to be able to read more and more with that 3 minutes. But then you might want to increase that time to 5 minutes or 10 minutes. But here's the thing, use a set amount of time to read through the Greek New Testament. Don't set yourself to read, I'm going to read a verse every day. Set a time parameter, because then you can easily change that, and it gives you a hard limit. Even if you get stuck on a verse or you get really interested in a verse, you've still got 5 minutes, so you can go deeper or you can skim a little bit more in that time. But 5 minutes is a good amount. More is better, obviously. But give yourself a set amount of time, use that time in your devotion to read a little bit of Greek. So those are the first 4 points. Remember why you're doing this. Recognize that Greek is a skill to develop. Build up your vocabulary, read progressively, and then fifthly, study regularly. Because after all, that's why you're here. That's why you learn Greek, is to study the language. And this may be where you want to find opportunities to teach and share what you know, and then use those as a way to drive you back into the text. So for instance, if you're in 1 John, early days, just finishing beginning Greek, go into 1 John, learn the vocabulary for it, and then try and find, maybe it's a Sunday school lesson, or maybe it's, a home group, or even your own family or friends or neighbors or whoever it is, and just find a way that you can actually teach them what you're learning. It may be regular, like a regular weekly thing, or it may not be. It might just be a one-off thing, just who you're talking to, maybe even on a Sunday morning at church. But find a way to find something in the text each week that you can share with somebody else. Even if it's just small, it's going to help you really internalize the language and get the benefit that you've been motivated to learn Greek for as well. So those are the 5 things you need to do when you finish beginning Greek. First of all, remember why you're doing this, to study the New Testament in the language God inspired it. Secondly, remember that Greek is a skill to develop, and it's going to take time, and you need to work hard to develop that, which is going to mean that you're going to have to, thirdly, continue to build your vocabulary. Fourthly, read progressively, starting from the easy text and building your knowledge up. And then fifthly, study and teach. Teach what you know to other people so they benefit from it, and also so that it drives you back into the study of the language so that you benefit from the skills that you've been developing. So I hope this has been useful. If you're interested in any of the resources I've mentioned, they're in the links below. And if you're interested in learning Biblical Greek, then perhaps go to masterntcreek.com/roadmap and download my roadmap, which will kind of give you an overview of what to expect through all the different stages and how to build it up from there. Thanks so much for watching. Keep taking small, consistent steps all the way to mastery. And if you're finishing beginning Greek, keep taking these 5 steps. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. See you then.